Can a small technical modification convert an erratic car into an almost unstoppable machine, and at the same time hide a terrifying risk for the entire team? Ferrari discovered it too late. And what they found in Hamilton's car in Baku could change their approach to the rest of the season. The key to this transformation was revealed in small pieces. Telemetry indicated that Hamilton was more consistent in its curve entrances and that its braking phase was shorter and more aggressive. A no less fact, considering that during the two previous races, his main complaints had focused on the lack of trust in the brakes. Each lap was a kind of tense conversation between pilot and machine, where uncertainty reigned. But in Baku, that conversation became mutual understanding. There were no hesitation. Each braking point seemed programmed with a scalpel. Internally, Ferrari began to excite himself. Not only because of the records, but because for the first time since Lewis signed with Maranello, the team noticed a different energy. More radio communication, more useful data transmitted to engineers, more active proposals on tuning. It was no longer just about adapting to the car, but of molding it. And this impulse also translated into numbers. In the second free session, Hamilton marked a time of 1:41,293, placing himself first in the table. But beyond the leadership, what impacted everyone was the stability of performance. It was not a miraculous lap with a perfect rebuild or aggressive motor map. It was the product of a balanced car, an inspired pilot, and a configuration that seemed to have solved a critical part of the problem: the braking balance and traction in low-speed areas. That Friday in Baku was not simply a good day. It was the first real indication that the SF25 had a hidden version that had not yet been released, and that Hamilton was getting closer to finding her. What they did not know in Ferrari or the paddock was that this resurgence was accompanied by an invisible failure, a latent threat that would be revealed only after the checkered flag. Baku was not just a place where Hamilton regained confidence. It was also the scenario where Ferrari showed, for the first time in the season, that he had been working silently in a technical solution that challenged the traditional logic of its aerodynamic design. A risky commitment developed almost in parallel with the winter tests, and that until that time had not been deployed in an official weekend. Innovation focused on the design of the rear wing. Instead of opting for a traditional profile, engineers developed a spoiler with square support at the ends and a profile interrupted in its upper section. This form not only reduced the resistance to advance in lines, but allowed to generate a type of progressive aerodynamic load in the most closed curves. The car gained stability without compromising peak speed. It was an engineering piece that challenged the convention and that, surprisingly, worked better than expected. But the wing was just the tip of the iceberg. What really made the difference in Hamilton driving was the deep modification in the brake system, specifically in the front cooling ducts. These shots, apparently designed only to deal with high brake temperatures in a circuit of aggressive braking constants, hit something else. From the Canada Grand Prix, Hamilton had requested very specific adjustments. A more immediate response from the brake pads, a softer transition between mechanical braking and regenerative braking of the hybrid engine, and a new hydraulic pressure balance for the front axle. Ferrari heard. And Baku was the first time that all those suggestions were implemented together. The new cooling shots not only had a broader output section, they had also been internally redesigned. They allowed to better control the temperature of the brake tweezers, stabilizing their performance throughout the lap. That, combined with the new compound of brake pads developed next to Brembo, offered a much firmer initial bite. The car responded to the first touch of the pedal. Hamilton no longer had to anticipate braking or constantly correct the sliding on the rear axle. He could now stop later and more precision, which was key in the most technical sections of the circuit. When the checkered flag fell in Baku, everything seemed to indicate that Ferrari had taken a qualitative leap. The team had not only recovered competitiveness, but had offered a version of its car that began to disturb direct rivals such as McLaren and Mercedes. The atmosphere in the box was optimistic. The data seemed to confirm that the new aerodynamic solutions and the redesigned brake system were working as expected, but that euphoria would last little. As is a protocol in Ferrari and in all high-level equipment, after each Grand Prix a technical verification chain is activated. Telemetry data is downloaded, cross the comments of the pilots and submit to comparative simulations. The ERS maps, the thermal degradation profiles of each component, energy load and discharge peaks, vibration frequencies and hybrid system temperature records are reviewed. Everything is analyzed to the slightest detail. And it was precisely there, in that digital microcosm, where an anomaly emerged. Lewis Hamilton's hybrid system had been operating for a good part of the race with a sustained loss of electrical power. At first, it seemed like a reading error, a momentary oscillation. But when repeating the analysis with different timeline and pressure filters, the anomaly was confirmed. The MGUK, the component responsible for recovering and delivering kinetic energy in the braking, was not delivering the expected power. Not only that, his performance had fluctuated throughout the middle stand of the race, coinciding with the most demanding sections of the circuit. The severity of the situation did not solve only in the loss of performance itself, but in its invisibility. Neither Hamilton nor engineers detected the problem in real time. The car was still competitive, the times by return did not show alarm signs, and the degradation of tires seemed under control. That was the most disturbing part of the finding. The car was yielding well, even with an active defect. This triggered all the alarms in Ferrari's reliability division. The initial suspicion pointed to the modification of the refrigeration ducts of the front brakes. Although they had officially been designed to improve ventilation in urban circuits, internally the hypothesis that these changes had indirectly altered the thermal management of the ERS was already handled. A possible overexposure to residual heat, accumulated in the lower area of the chassis, could have affected the refrigeration efficiency of the MGUK, or even having created microfluctuations in the electrical system. The SF-25 was operating to the limit, without anyone knowing. The image that best describes the situation is that of a balancer walking on a tightrope with bandaged eyes. Ferrari had not only improved his car, he had crossed an invisible line between technical innovation and operational risk. And the most disturbing thing was that, if that exhaustive after-Carrera analysis had not been carried out, the problem could have climbed into the next rounds of the championship. A total failure of the hybrid system in the middle of a race, in a warmer circuit or with greater energy load, would have meant immediate abandonment or something worse, a loss of unexpected control and full regenerative braking. Maranello's technical team activated a contingency plan. Samples of the Hamilton hybrid system were sent to the headquarters in Italy for full physical analysis. The chassis was temporarily removed. Leclerc data were used as a cross-reference to confirm that the problem was specific to the number 44 and not of the SF-25 General Series. Luckily, Monegasco's car did not show similar symptoms. But that only increased concern. Why only one of the two cars failed? Was it a combination of unique factors in Hamilton's power unit? Or a signal of a deeper structural weakness? The technical discovery made after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix left Ferrari against a crossroads. What was initially celebrated as a validation of the secret development of the SF-25 ended up generating more questions than answers. The euphoria of seeing Lewis Hamilton recover rhythm and trust became a silent storm inside the team. The reality was clear. They had been on the verge of a catastrophic failure without knowing it. And that forces to rethink everything. From the operational point of view, the team also faces a reorganization. Simulation, thermal reliability, and telemetry departments must review their methodologies. The fact that the MGUK problem was not detected during the race reveals a failure in the real-time alert system. It is a sign that, although the car has evolved, the environment that manages it still has weaknesses. But beyond the technical aspect, there is something even more important: the human factor. Within Ferrari, these types of situations always generate tensions. Engineers questioning decisions, responsible for areas demanding changes, pressure from the directive to prevent the narrative from escaping from their hands. And in the midst of everything, the media pressure that will inevitably return if the car fails again. Ferrari is now in a gray area. They have a car that has demonstrated potential, but that can collapse if their innovations are not implemented with extreme control. They have the most successful pilot of the modern era, but also the most demanding. They have a basis to fight the title, but they are at a single technical failure to lose the opportunity. Hamilton managed to perform to the highest level with a car that, without knowing it, was damaged from within. And that raises an awkward question. How quickly it would have been if everything worked 100%? And what would have happened if the anomaly became a total failure in the middle of the race? Questions that engineers must now answer under pressure, while the championship advances without waiting for anyone. But beyond the data, telemetry maps, or aerodynamic configurations, this story reminds us that Formula One is also a mental battle, a silent war of confidence between pilot, car, and equipment. And when one of those three elements cracks, even due to an imperceptible fissure, the risk is multiplied. And now I ask you, do you think Ferrari must continue betting on these aggressive technical solutions, knowing that error margins are minimal? Leave it in the comments.